Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger. Ready to move out.
You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight?
This town needs an enema.
Riddle me this, riddle me that. Who's afraid of the big black bat?
When Gotham is ashes, you have my permission to die.
Gotham! This is your liberation.
My mother warned me about getting into cars with strange men.
This isn't a car.
20 years in Gotham. How many good guys are left? How many stayed that way? He has the power to wipe out the entire human race.
Tell me, do you bleed? You will.
I want you to tell all your friends about me.
What are you?
He's a silent guardian. A watchful protector. A dark knight. I'm Batman.
Let the games begin.
Welcome to the Batman on Film podcast. Here are your hosts, Bill Jett Ramey and Rick Shue.
Hey now.
Hey now. That's not really the right kind of hey now. I just thought I'd, for variety, shake it up a little bit.
That's perfectly fine. Thanks for listening to the Batman on Film podcast. BOF is the sponsor and a proud member of the Batman Podcast Network. Check out all the shows, including this one, at BatmanPodcastNetwork.com. I am the host of this here podcast, Bill Jett Ramey. Oh yeah, and I also founded Batman on Film way back in 1998 and everything. And I'm joined today by the podcast co-host, Rick Shue. Rick, how are you this morning?
I am well. How are you?
I'm doing well. On vacation, so nothing could be better right now. Good weather today, nice and cool here in the greater metropolitan area of Tomball, Texas this morning, and sunshine. So yeah, stuff planned this afternoon.
Yeah. I feel bad. You know, Dallas is gorgeous today as well. In fact, I'm about to get out in it. I feel bad for my friends on the East Coast. Not such a pleasant day in the great state of New York.
Yeah, it's a mandatory weather segment here on the podcast. I think my friends up in Minnesota got a bunch of snow as
when
well.
When do they not get snow in Minnesota?
June through, let's see, September. And I know they've even had snow in September. I've never experienced it that late in the year, but I think they've had, I don't know. I'm sure someone from Minnesota is listening and can inform us on the status of snow, the seasonal snow up there. I'm usually there in the summer, and the weather's great, so I'm not going to complain. Lows in the 50s, highs in the upper 70s to 80. So coming from Texas, where, well, you know how that goes, man. You know, where it's damn 90s from the middle or latter part of June up into October. So it's a nice break. All right, enough of this weather talk. Anything else on weather, Rick, before we move on?
No, I think we're good with weather.
All right,
we'll leave that to Al Roker.
All right. So, this is kind of an emergency podcast. I guess not really an emergency podcast. I guess it'd be a special edition podcast. It was not anything we were planning on doing, actually. And then,
well, let's tell everybody you're on vacation.
Yeah.
I have a very slow work day today.
Yeah.
And we were just on the phone and we were rambling, and it was like, why don't we just put this on the air, man? Let's do a podcast. We try to get a hold of our guys, and they couldn't quite do it right now, Justin and Ryan. So we just said, hey, let's just get on here and see where it takes us. So here we are.
All right. That's exactly how this played out. We were talking about a story that dropped yesterday from Collider, and it involves a sequel to Man of Steel. And it looks like maybe, okay, this is all, let me preference, take all this with a grain of salt. This is nothing that's been confirmed. I have seen, and Ryan wanted me to point out that, and Justin, that there were some outlets are reporting this like it's a Matt Reeves thing. It's in the works. Or it's even happened already. but apparently Matthew Vaughn, who directed Kick-Ass, The Kingsman sequel. He also did the X-Men First Class. I like him a lot as a director myself.
And a producer, man.
Yes.
We're talking about Snatch and Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
We know one thing for sure. The Brits can get American comic book films right.
Well, yes. I mean, they haven't sucked at it. And if you want to count Chris Nolan, who's basically American and British, but that's a whole different topic. Anyway, so let's just say Warner Brothers are making eyes at Matthew Vaughn, and whether he's batting his eyes back is a difference. We don't know yet. We know that at one time he did pitch a Superman film to Warner Brothers. This was before Nolan and Goyer got involved and ended up making Man of Steel. He and who is it? He wrote Kick-Ass with. Just had him. Mark Millar. Okay, had pitched Superman to Warner Brothers, and didn't get the gig. So maybe this time around he'll do it. So essentially, that's it. Okay, that's the end of the story. But it does mean that maybe finally they're starting to get some movement on a sequel to Man of Steel. So let me ask you this first, Rick.
And if you don't mind, let me
go ahead.
Park that question for 2 seconds if you don't mind.
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong on this.
Mm-hmm.
In like regards to Chris McKay, for instance, he has talked about Nightwing, and hopefully he's going to come back on our show too soon, and we can ask him some questions about that directly. I don't, to my knowledge, Matthew Vaughn there has not been a word from him directly, correct?
Yes, he hasn't said anything.
Okay,
anything.
So
Warner Brothers hasn't said anything. This is just this is Collider reporting something they heard. That's all it is.
And we like Collider, by the way. That's not a knock. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be recognizing it if we did.
No knock on Collider at all. So I guess what I was going to ask you is that do you take Batman v Superman? Is that a Man of Steel sequel to you?
No.
Is it a direct sequel to Man of Steel?
No.
Okay, it's not.
No, and listen, and one of the reasons I refuse...
Yeah, go ahead.
I refuse to say that it is because Superman was given a raw deal in that film, and I refuse to say that was a sequel.
Yes.
So.
Does it account for things that happen in Man of Steel? Yes. I mean, the whole thing with the battle of Metropolis between Superman and Zod at the end of Man of Steel is it's the jumping on point.
Yes, the catalyst for
catalyst for BVS, but it's not what was originally intended. There has yet to be a true sequel to Man of Steel, a Superman centric, a Superman starring film. Hell, Superman was damn near a supporting character in BVS. I mean, let's be honest. What was the selling point of that film, dude?
Well, what's the first word in the title of that film?
Exactly. Okay, exactly. So, and as someone who has been hoping for and promoting that they would make a proper sequel, I think, and you said it. Go ahead. What do you? Henry Cavill's he's getting wasted right now, isn't he?
He's getting completely wasted. I think he's fantastic in the role. I've always said that, and what he deserves, and what, quite frankly, what the character deserves, is a strong film that is a true sequel to Man of Steel, which did work overall. That's by far the best film in the DCEU. I still enjoy it. Like you, Bill, I enjoy 2/3 of it. Some of it retroactively was fixed for me, and Batman versus Superman. That's one of the things that BVS got right. I love that whole opening sequence in BVS and putting Bruce Wayne in Metropolis. I thought all that was rather brilliant. I just forget about the part of the bats lifting up a young Bruce Wayne. I just put that out of my memory. But anyway, moving on from that. So there were things about it. There's what I call good bones. Okay, there are good bones to tell a story. Now, I don't like that Jimmy Olsen has been assassinated. That's unfortunate, but disregarding that fact, and I also don't know how they're going to bring Superman back to life, but that's Justice League's job. More importantly, I don't know how they're going to bring Clark Kent back to life. And we're going to have another...
Superman is one thing. How in the hell you bring Clark Kent back? I have
well,
no
it's one
idea.
of the it's one of the original sins of Superman Returns was you have Superman returning at the exact same time that Clark Kent returns, and you're essentially going to have to pull that off again in Justice League.
Yeah,
either that or he's not working at the Daily Planet anymore. Then that opens up a whole other can of worms. So I don't know how they're going to fix that, and I'm assuming if they've been talking to Matthew Vaughn, he's privy to everything that unfolds in Justice League. So here's my point, is that, but still, even all that said, there's still good bones. And here's what I mean by bones. I love the origin story of Man of Steel. We were talking about this on the phone yesterday, Bill, or whenever it was. Hell, maybe it was on our last podcast. Some of this stuff starts to bleed together for me, whether or not we were on air together or just on the phone together. But we were talking about how much we loved all the Krypton stuff in Man of Steel.
Yeah, that was in the podcast last.
That was in the podcast. Okay.
The other day.
Yeah, since you edit them, you would know. You hear it 1,000 times. I hear it twice. When we say it, the one time I listen to it.
You only listen to the podcast once. Golly.
What's that?
You listen to it once. You're only a one-time listener of your own show.
I listen to all of our podcasts once all the way through, and then oftentimes I put it back in and just kind of listen to bits and pieces of it.
Just checking. Yeah. I thought you may think
I do have two. Hell no, our shows don't suck. I love those shows. Right. Hey, listen, there's 2 Left Shoe. I only have 8 Left Shoe podcasts. You know, there's 2 I have not even listened to all the way through yet. 2. Anyway, there's not a Batman on Film podcast that I haven't listened to in the last 2 years.
Honestly, I'm the same. I do edit it, and then I listen to it, and that's kind of it. So
that's it, right? That's kind of it. Well, we don't want to be that self-congratulatory anyway.
Yeah.
All right. So back to my point here. This is long-winded, but we're going to get there. Is that the bones are the origin story and the cast. Across the board, the cast. Okay? Like everyone, love everyone in their role. I even like Jesse as Lex. That's one of the things that are in the negative column to a lot of people about BVS. Even people I know that like BVS more than I do don't like that interpretation.
You know, as much as I'm very on BVS, I really didn't have that much of a problem with Eisenberg as Lex. So
I think Eisenberg's Lex was an interesting take, and I also think that there's a character. I like what I saw on that last scene with him in jail, and just his demeanor, his body language, the look in his face. I was like, there's a transformation that has taken place, and I'm curious to see where he takes it. But neither here or there. There's good bones, and you have a star. Henry Cavill is really good in that role. I don't think there's a harder character to play than Superman on screen. I say that from like the perspective of acting. And I also say that because you are, first of all, you don't have a mask. Okay. You put on glasses and that's about it. So it's all you own it. Okay. You also are playing the most powerful being on the planet. And how do you do that and yet still be human? Because it's a contradiction in reality. You can't be a god and still just be an everyday person with feelings and normal day-to-day things that, an average person goes through. And that's what Superman is. That's what makes him work. His emotional vulnerability is his weakness. And that in Krypton, of course. But that is a hard thing to pull off. And I think that when people talk about Henry Cavill not being good in that part, I'm like, man, maybe I'm just seeing something you guys don't. I don't know. Maybe it's $30,000 of actor training over the last 20 years. That includes college, by the way. I think that his performance is understated. It's nuanced, and quite frankly, it's beautiful. One of my favorite scenes in Batman versus Superman is when he has that. I don't want to call it a flashback. It's more of a hallucination, or he's daydreaming about his dad, his Earth father. It's Kevin Costner, and that whole exchange with them. Go back and watch that scene, and then shoot me on Twitter and tell me that Cavill sucks in that part. Are you kidding me? It's a beautiful performance. Let's give and it's one of the greatest characters of all time. Let's give this guy a proper platform. Let's give. We haven't had a great Superman movie since Superman 2. Really, we haven't had a great Superman movie since the original Richard Donner. Superman 2 was a really good, fun sequel. It's a little bit of a mismatch because 2 different directors were involved in it. Superman 3 was silly. Superman 4 is disastrous. Superman Returns just didn't work. and then there's Man of Steel. That's kind of a mixed bag, right? Let's have an epic, gorgeous, beautiful. Let's have the best Superman film since Richard Donner's original. And I think that with the right director and perhaps Mr. Vaughn is the person to do it, you have the right actor. He's already in place. You have the bones. Let's hit a home run and don't try to shove Aquaman and Wonder Woman and even Batman down our throats, okay? Just be a Superman movie.
Exactly. And here's a quote from Vaughn. This is a few years ago. Mr. Vaughn said about what he would hope to see in a Superman film, which would be Man of Steel. I think that's the one thing not to do with Superman. Trying to do the serious, the Dark Knight version. Superman is about color and fun, or it should be, for me. And I know there was I saw some comments online about, Vaughn is too, he's violent. He makes violent films and they're, edgy and, there's darkness and so forth. But look what he said about Superman right here, Rick, how Superman should be done. And we sure as hell haven't seen that in either Man of Steel or Batman v Superman, right?
No, yeah, you can't necessarily look. Bryan Singer's X-Men films and his Superman Returns they're very different in tone and style and everything, right? There's some signature visual things that a director has that you can see, but so I don't look at it that way. I think it's all about just getting the character right.
Mm-hmm.
Here, I mean, whatever that is, and if it's Deadpool, you have to be funny and violent as shit,
mm-hmm.
right? That's what it is. That's what he is. That's why it's awesome. And by the way, the new Deadpool teaser trailer is freaking awesome. By the way, just a side note, but with Superman. And look, I understand that there are some comic book purists, and God bless you guys, that can talk to me about every incarnation of Superman and how sometimes some of us in our head, I guess it's maybe the silver age of cinema or the golden age of cinema. I always get those two mixed up. But and in terms of and comics for that matter, from the 1970s and 80s, early 80s especially, how we view Superman and how it's in our heads. His character is Christopher Reeve's Superman. And I understand that there are variations of Superman. I understand that there are multiple stories, many I've read myself, where he can get pissed off and angry and dare I say even a little brooding and dark. That's the problem is that, and again, this is not Henry Cavill's fault, is that the films that he's been in, it's such a cynical world. And then he's a cynical Superman because of it. And that's the problem. And I think that's probably what Matthew Vaughn is talking about, is that everything is cynical. The world where we live in this apocalyptic post 9/11 world, and that's the world that Superman now lives in. And so it's dragging him down, and he's depressed and morose and confused. And what is the line in Batman versus Superman where he flies off and says, Lois, not all of us can stay good forever, or something along those lines. And I remember just watching that moment going, but other than some parts in Man of Steel, you just here and there, I haven't seen you be good. I mean, yeah, you're saving people, you're doing the act of it, but your heart's not in it. And I think what Matthew Vaughn is saying is like, let's acknowledge that this is a cynical world. We don't need to try to create a universe like Bryan Singer did. And I appreciate his efforts. I do, because Superman's hard to pull off, I know. But Superman Returns was a very colorful, kind of cartoonish metropolis and universe he lived in. Make the world real, but make this guy the person that we look up to lift us out of the. I'm gonna take a line out of Batman Begins to lift us out of apathy, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and that's what he needs. I don't, when he says colorful, I don't think that means that if he does do a Superman film that it's going to be a bright blue, bright red suit. That's not what he means. I think it's more symbolic. Do you agree with that?
Yes, symbolic. He can smile, Superman. I don't think the Henry Cavill DCU Superman smiled like one time in Man of Steel when he was first learning how to fly and he had a big smile on his face. But I think besides that, did he smile? Did he smile in BVS at all?
He smirked a little bit. If you put it in slow motion, you'll see it when he saves the girl in Mexico City.
Yeah.
Right. And delivers her to her family. But and that scene is particularly, it's also one of those things where you say, look, Zack Snyder can capture a beautiful moment on screen, because that whole sequence where he saves her, especially in IMAX, and it's gorgeous to watch. But when you remove yourself from that aspect from the overall aesthetic, and you look at the character, it's like, good God, man, Jesus, like be Superman other than just saving, like feel it. And it doesn't mean you got to wink at the camera and do a little one-liner like Singer had Brandon Routh do. It's just about embodying the character. And so, and then he's killed off before we ever really fell in love with him. And then he's going to come. I don't know. There's certainly a mess right now in terms of how to deal with this. I don't know how they're going to pull it off in Justice League. But here's now my new view on Justice League. And this is not getting off topic. This actually ties into Superman. Okay. Is that I am not optimistic about that film at all. However, what if it can just accomplish this? Now that we know Matt Reeves is directing the Batman, now that Chris McKay is very likely going to direct Nightwing, and hopefully Matthew Vaughn is directing Superman 2, Man of Steel 2. There's a course correction here. And then what's the gentleman's name with Aquaman? I'm going blank.
James Wan.
James Wan, thank you. And James Wan. And making these films director-centric and giving them a proper platform. So if Justice League can just do this, if Justice League can, at the end of the day, even if it's a D+ or a C-, just give some good foundation and to course correct some of the mistakes that were made. Do your very best to bring Superman back. Make sure to get Clark back in the Daily Planet. Reestablish that environment. There's ways that film can still serve a positive purpose, and let the new filmmakers take it from there and run with it. The worst thing about Justice League is, I think with Superman it'll be fine because he's dead. They have to bring him back and reestablish him, so they're not going to pull him back away from that towards the end. It'll just be that way. I just hope they don't mess up anything with Aquaman or anyone else that makes the solo films more complicated of a task to tackle.
Well, that's what I've said before, and I agree with what you're saying. I would say that the best thing that Justice League can do is just put a big, tight, nice bow on top of this I don't know, trilogy, if you want to call it, Man of Steel, BVS, Justice League trilogy. And then from that point on, yes, James Wan can do his thing in Aquaman. Matt Reeves can do his thing on the Batman. And then whoever, Matthew Vaughn or whoever ends up getting hired for Man of Steel 2, let him do his thing. So that's where I'm at. I just think that there can't be any continuing story threads left unanswered after Justice League. It needs to end this trilogy, if you want to call it. I know, I think, is that an appropriate way to look at those three films, Rick? It's kind of a trilogy.
I think that's how people are viewing it, sure. And that's obviously the purpose of it at the end of the day. So that's fine. Then just put a bow on it, end it. This talk of Justice League 2, whatever, I don't even buy that. I don't think there's any talk of Justice League 2. I think these characters need to branch off and do their own thing, and I think that's what we're probably going to get. It sure looks that way.
Yeah, and that brings up the point about the directors. I mean, I don't know if Matthew Vaughn is going to take this gig, if he's even going to be offered the gig, but if that's the kind of director that they're going for a Man of Steel sequel, then it tells me again, when you throw in James Wan, especially James Wan and Matt Reeves with Aquaman and the Batman respectively, they're going with strong filmmakers who, if hired, are going to want to do their own thing and not, like I said on the phone, not, be a episode director on a television series. Do you know what I mean by that?
Sure.
That analogy. They're
Absolutely.
They're going to want to make the film that they're going to have an idea, and they're going to want to make the film that they want to make, and that's the way it should be. I even said this before. I may not like Batman v Superman, and I may not like Justice League. Who knows when it comes out? But I still, especially with BVS, I mean, that's the best example I can give when it comes to Zack Snyder. I still support Zack Snyder as a director making the film he wants to make. Now, I may not like it, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to support that way of making movies. And that's what I would say Batman v Superman is the best example of that, because we know that things have been changed on Justice League after Batman v Superman. So it's not as director driven as its predecessor. And of course, Man of Steel still had a lot of, you can see Nolan's fingerprints on that as producer. So that's just my 2 cents and my soapbox when it comes to the directors. And I still prefer the director-driven approach. What's your thoughts?
Absolutely, that's exactly what I look. We have some disagreements, Bill, on the DCEU in terms of I like Batman versus Superman a little better than you do. There's little minor quibbles about certain elements of some of these films that one might like better than the other. But at the end of the day, there's the two things that we agree on across the board. Keep the cast. They're all great. And let's make these films director-centric. So really 3 things. And then let's, as best as we can, let's not concern ourselves with having all these guys running around on screen together like the Avengers.
Exactly. Good point.
Right.
All right, let me ask you this, kind of moving away from that. Having a little fun on Twitter lately, have you?
Well, I typically look. I like to rough it up a little bit. I mean, that's just kind of my personality. I like to debate, but I want it to genuinely be a respectful, fun. Yes.
You like. I will say this about you. You enjoyed the discussion and debate, but you can do it. You never seem to get angry at all.
No, I don't get angry.
You are very good. That's a compliment. You're a good debater.
I get smart-assy when it's really ridiculous, and then I try to avoid that a little bit too, because it's but it's sometimes it's just hard, and you're laughing when you're doing it. Somebody says something really ridiculous, I'm like, cool story, bro. Just little things like that. And I've worked on it really hard on my political page, because I want civil discourse to win the day on that as well, and I have failed in offering that to my listeners and readers, but I'm getting better. So anyway, it's same thing with this is I'm also very understanding of people's passion about these films, and I don't think you're stupid if you love Batman versus Superman. I don't think that you're stupid if you love Man of Steel. Not at all. And I don't even want to use the word stupid. Where I do think you're misguided is look here. I'm going to do a bill. Look here. Because I've been saying that now for 4 or 5 months straight. I've never said it in my life until just a few months ago. Look here. I love the Star Wars prequels. I understand that they're flawed, and that I understand why people don't like them. I get it. I'm not blind to that.
So you've never engaged anybody online and had a complete meltdown over the fact that someone criticized something that you
we were talking about Collider earlier, and Kristen Harloff, big fan of that guy. And dude, if you're listening, I want to be a guest star on Jedi Council. Thank you. But no, I'm a big fan of that guy. I think he's great, and he bugs the shit out of me sometimes with his prequel bashing. And I've let him know that on Twitter. And I've said, hey, I'm a big fan. I appreciate your analysis. I just kind of wish you don't have to attack the prequels all the time. Like when you don't even like, it wasn't even necessary to bring them up. It's not like they were the topic.
You didn't.
And we had
you didn't go on a cussing spree. And
no, we had
eat a dick or anything like. You didn't do any of that stuff, Rick. Come on now.
He gave me a class act response, and it was like that. This is how this is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And of course, I chimed in today on somebody I follow on Twitter that I like. He's cool, and he shared a Screen Rant article. I don't really know Screen Rant. There's some good articles I've read on Screen Rant. In fact, the article that we're referencing right now was actually very well written and thought out. I disagree with the analysis, but it's not like it was ignorant. But I just chimed in basically saying, look, they were saying that the DCU doesn't need to do anything differently. Who cares what the critics say? Don't change for the critics. Everything that they're doing is working. And I made a comment that that's not true.
Really?
Right.
It's working.
And so my Twitter blew up. It's still going for the last 3 hours. I can't keep up with the notifications, but my favorite one is Oh, I just looked at his page. He's Batman on film, Nolan, COCK sucker.
Yeah.
And okay, that's whatever. I don't even know whatever. And I responded, I'm like, hey, of all the guys on Batman on film, I'm not even that big of a fan of most of Nolan's movies. That's the funny part. You call me that. That's silly. But his Batman films are flawless. I don't care if Nolan never makes a good movie again. Hope he does. I think he's a great guy and a talented guy. I want to see him successful and happy. But to me, he made a perfect Batman trilogy, and I will forever be grateful. Who cares if I think that Insomnia was not very good and that some of his other films are overrated? Who cares? You know what? The Dark Knight, Batman Begins, and Dark Knight Rises are masterpieces, and so is Memento. But to call me a Nolan sycophant, it's just nonsense. So yeah, there's no. I almost don't want to talk too much about this. I don't want them to really get the light of day here, but there are some. It's just kind of funny to me. I mean, I just got to be honest. There's one person that says, I said, yeah, it made $900 million because it has Batman and Superman in it, but keep in mind that Deadpool did better domestically. I mean, and then this person said, well, you know, and it was actually very well, to give them credit, it was very well stated. It was like iconic is not synonymous with box office success. Hey, Rick Shube, Batman and Robins and Superman Returns, say hello. I chuckled. I'm like, yeah, that's actually that's a funny, smart ass response. I'm gonna give that person credit because I just like a good, smart ass response. However, where they're wrong is that Batman and Robin and Superman Returns, I don't care how you look at it, that's a sequel. That's what Superman Returns is. It's a sequel to the Richard Donner Superman film. It's a soft reboot sequel, but it's a sequel. In the same way Batman Forever is a sequel to Batman 89. It's exactly the same thing. But I said, maybe you don't understand the difference in the first time that Batman and Superman share a cinematic live action screen together versus two bad sequels. Not the same thing. Apples and basketballs. All right. It made $900 million. And what I did, Bill, is I was bored.
Well, let's be fair. It made $873 million. It didn't.
I'll say 900 for good measure. Whatever.
We'll round up just to make him happy.
Make him feel better. But yes. What I did is I went and I took a screenshot of Suicide Squad, Batman v Superman, and Man of Steel, and I put them all on a grid together, and I circled the audience score, not the critics. Because this whole thing was about, this was a smear campaign, and who cares about what the critics think? And I'm like, you guys should care about what the audience thinks. And I have kids in school. I think you retweeted this, Bill, and 63% is an F. Okay?
Yes.
That's an F.
Yeah.
And that's Batman versus Superman audience score. Man of Steel audience score is 75%, which is, you know, that's the best one. At least it's a C. And then Suicide Squad, let me pull it up here. Suicide Squad, 63% also. Same thing as Man of Steel. So you have 63%, Man of Steel 75%. Those are audience scores. That's the audience. Not the 27%, 55%, 26%. That's critics. So this isn't a conspiracy or a smear campaign. Love the films all you want. We've said this for years. That's great. That's spectacular. Hell, I get into more contentious arguments with people that hate Batman versus Superman than I do with people that love it when it's a one-on-one conversation. Hell, Bill, you and I were hammering out a little bit the other day when some of you guys were saying it's unwatchable and horrendous, and I was like, tap the brakes. I'm not going that far. There's a lot of redeeming quality. My buddy Jeremy, who's one of the Left Shoe guys, was like, name one. Name one. I'm like, here, I'll give you 10. Here's 10 great things. And Justin chimed in. So I'm stuck in the middle where that's concerned with the haters and then the people that love it. But where I'm not stuck is my opinion be damned anyway. All right. And by the way, my B review, I'm not gonna retract that review because it's how I felt. It's a snapshot in time. I called it a flimsy B. It's now like I'm giving it a C plus, and I don't really ever want to watch it again because every time I watch it, I want to take it down a notch. And if I keep watching Batman versus Superman, I think it's gonna end up being an F in my book because it's not aging well, and it's an uneasy, uncomfortable, morose film to sit through. So my point is this: it doesn't matter anyway. All that matters is how it's received by audience members, and if we want this whole thing to sustain, Okay, there has to be course correction because you can't have too many more films that are received like these. Who cares if they've made money? All right, a lot of movies end up making money, that aren't good movies. Armageddon was one of the biggest films of the year that it came out, whatever, late 90s. That's a god-awful, unwatchable pile of shit. But it made a lot of money. A lot of money doesn't mean it's good. And if it doesn't make money, doesn't mean it's bad either. I get that. But when we're talking about putting it all in a pot together and making this stew, you have to look at all the ingredients. And that stew tastes like shit. All right? It doesn't taste good. And people aren't enjoying it. And you have to cater to hundreds of people. You're not just making stew for your girlfriend. Mm-hmm. So, right? And you got to have hundreds of people that like that stew when you're doing a catering job. And that's the same thing with this, is that people have to love these films. Otherwise, you're not going to get rehired as a caterer. All of a sudden, you're not doing catering anymore. All of a sudden, we're not going to have DC films for years because we have to reshuffle everything and regroup, and that's going to be problematic. So you want this to continue as a fan, you better damn demand that they make these better for people, because they're not going to make these multi-million-dollar projects just for you to enjoy. Sorry, it's just not how that works.
No, right? They're not even made for comic book fans, to be frank.
Yeah, God, man, some of my friends that hate it the most are the comic book purists that think Zack Snyder is the devil. My buddy Micah, don't even get him started on Zack Snyder. Mm-hmm. That guy can talk Batman as well as anybody I've ever met.
Yeah.
He reads a comic book a day. I mean, it's just him. He's just that dude. But that's it. That's really, at the end of the day, all this was is I chimed in, and next thing you know, it turned into a shit show on Twitter.
Well, all I can say is and I'm a fan of a lot of things besides Batman, and I understand it's when someone tells you something that you love sucks, it's sometimes hard to accept, but you've got to live in a reality. You can't live in a bubble where everything is fine. I mean, there's a reason why Warner Brothers has course corrected, why they made changes to Justice League, why they're making changes to their DC films going forward after Justice League. It's not just for the hell of it. And, sorry if sometimes the truth hurts, but it is the way of it's just the way it is in life, man,
Right.
Not just for film. That's the world we live in, and we got to deal with things we don't like, and we can't sit there and say they're not true. But look, anyone who thinks that we're just out to get DC movies is just completely wrong. All of this, if you want to call it criticism, whatever you want to call it, we do here, it's because we demand better. And it just goes back to your point you're trying to make. We want these films to be better. We want them to be better. And
hey, in real time, because it ties into what you're saying, this thing was retweeted that you tweeted about when I did a screenshot of all the audience scores of the three films. This person says, so the majority of the audience liked them and the majority of the critics didn't. Isn't that what the article is suggesting in the first place, which is the Screen Rant article? And I put 2 Fs and 1 C constitutes audiences, quote unquote, liking them. Man, I hope some of these people never have kids. Like, man, my kids got great grades. They had a 63, a 63, and a 75. I'm gonna give them a raise in their allowance.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. If you're looking at it that way, yeah, the majority
makes my head spin.
I thought
it's all right.
The majority of the audience like them, but let's be honest. Is that the score you want from the audience? Do you want them only 63% of the people like a movie? What percentages again, Rick?
It's 2 63% and 1 75%.
Okay, you want much higher.
Right.
Since we are, Nolan's sea suckers, what's the audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes for those films?
Well, I'll look them up right now, but I know they're going to be high, and as they should be, and as should be Batman 89 in my view as well. Which, by the way, did not get all that great of reviews when it came out. It was a mixed bag of as far as just the critical backlash. Batman '89 wasn't some well-received film from the critics either, and it should have been. I think it got a bad rap.
It wasn't. No, it wouldn't be considered rotten on Rotten Tomatoes.
No. It just wasn't. For instance, my man Roger Ebert didn't like it. That's just one example.
Yes.
All right, Batman Begins. 84% critics. Let's just look at audience scores. 94%. All right, and my guess is that The Dark Knight's going to probably be the same, and my guess is The Dark Knight Rises will drop because that's the contentious one out of the three. You know, that's the one that, you know, I know people that love the first two and don't like Rises. It's not all right. The Dark Knight is 94%, so it's basically the same thing. Let's say Rises is, I'm going to guess it's in the 70s. Oh no, I'm pleasantly surprised.
What's in
it's
80?
90. It's 90%.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's 87% with critics. I wasn't going to be surprised if it was like a 78 or 79%. So there you have it. Quite frankly, that Dark Knight Rises critic score is higher than I remember it too. For some reason, I thought it was in the late 70s as well. Who knows? Maybe I'm thinking of Revenge of the Sith. But always got to get a Star Wars plug. So, Bill, why don't we talk a little bit about what we're up to next weekend? Or do you want to have something? You want to talk about something else prior to that, or?
Oh, next weekend. Well, next weekend I'm going to a football camp. You're talking about the convention, right?
Well, okay. That's the difference. Here's a good topic here. And we can take a poll. When do you say this weekend versus next weekend? So I've always been taught that this is the one coming up, the closest one, regardless if it's a Monday or a Thursday. Next is the one after. So even if it's a Monday, when you say next, it really means 2 weeks.
Oh, no. This weekend to me is the one upcoming. Not
so what is
one
next,
in the past.
What is next weekend to you?
That you would say next weekend when you are actually in the weekend present.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that would be an easier way to do it. So, but by that rationale, you're basically saying this and next are synonymous. Because there's not really an overlap of
I
time.
can't. If I'm talking about next weekend, I'm probably, if I say next weekend we'll do this, it's either Friday evening, Saturday, or Sunday.
All right, it's March 25th. It's a Saturday.
Yes.
All right. It's the Fan Expo in Dallas. Now we've talked about this a little bit on our page, but anyway, here's my point.
Yes.
Is that we got our press passes.
Yes.
Which is great. We're gonna have a camera.
Yes.
My friend April, who's a big Batman fan, she's Batman tattoos. I mean, she's the real deal. She's gonna actually hook up with us, and my buddy Cody, for that matter, is gonna be there as well. So I'm gonna have multiple friends there. But April has been kind enough she's gonna carry the camera around, so Bill and I can do our thing. And Mark Hamill is going to be there. So is Adam West and Burt Ward. And who else is there on that Saturday? Bill, do you remember? There's other Batman people there.
There are several artists and writers. And I believe... Oh, yeah. Yes, Kevin Conroy is going to be there. So
we'll have the voice of Batman, the voice of the Joker. I wonder if they'll be sitting next to one another.
Probably not.
Probably not, because that would be a stampede. They'll probably keep those guys separate. But here is what I'm gonna say this and get it on the air. I am determined to get Mark Hamill on camera with us for an interview, if you will. I just want to ask him, do a brief introduction, and ask him one Joker question, one Batman question. So I'm saying right now, I'm gonna make it happen. So you guys can all hold me to it. You can hold me to it. I'm gonna make it happen. We're gonna get there at the ass crack of dawn. We're going to. I mean, the roosters will still be crowing, man, when we get there. We're gonna take a shirt into him. We're gonna give him a Batman Unfilled shirt, and I'm gonna say, look, do you have? Can we get a couple questions with you on camera? I don't want to, And anyway, I don't want to give away my tactic or my technique, but that's how I'm going to do it. And we're going to get them on camera. So that's my goal. That's the ultimate goal. Regardless of that, whatever that outcome is, if I end up being wrong and have to eat crow on that, we're going to have a lot of fun, man. We're going to go around. We're going to talk to people. We're going to get people's feedback. We're going to we are going to embrace our environment and just be running around being idiots for a few hours. And I'm so excited. I'll have a Batman on Film swag. We're going to take some T-shirts that we're going to give away. Oh, and by the way, Bill, I've got Justin on that for us. He's got those wheels already in motion. He and I talked last night, and he had a great idea. I'll tell you more about it off mic.
All right.
But anyway, so it's going to be a lot of fun. So if you're in Dallas if you're going to the Fan Expo, let us know. A couple of you guys have let us know on Twitter, but let's definitely shake some hands and meet some of you guys in person. I would love that.
Yeah, come see us. We'll be there. We'll even get you on camera. You could end up in a beautifully produced by Justin Kowalski Batman on Film video of our escapades at the Dallas Fan Expo at the end of this month. Really looking forward to that, because let me tell you, I have grown to hate Comic-Con in San Diego. I think every fan should experience it at least once. I've experienced it way too many times, and it's just not fun for me anymore. It's gotten so big, Rick, that it's not, you can't even walk the floor without, it's a cluster F. That's all I can say. And I go when I have to cover something, because I still have my press stuff for Comic-Con, but I think this one is going to be, this one gets a lot of people, but it's not going to be the nightmare that San Diego Comic-Con has come to be in terms of logistics and crowd and all that stuff. So we should be able to move around and actually enjoy our time there. I know I will for sure. So I'm really looking forward to this. And also, we've got some things coming on video in the works that we're working on. It may not come into fruition until, maybe a year or two, but let's just say this. We're working on some cool stuff, right, Rick?
We're working on a lot of cool stuff. We've got, I'm so excited. We're branching out, and we're going to do a lot of new interesting things that we've never done before, and I think you guys are going to love it.
Yep, I do too. Hope you do. All right, Rick, plug something, man. It's only me and you today.
Yeah, so, be at the Fan Expo in Dallas. Follow me on Twitter, ShewRick, ShewRick. Can't even spell my own name properly. And don't be a sycophantic fanboy, please. Just don't. For the sake of humanity, don't do it. That's all I got.
All right. I will let announcer Rachel take us out. You know what? We did that, what villain are we thing the last podcast. And someone had a really funny comment on Twitter, said then announcer Rachel must be Talia. If I'm Bane, she must be Talia. I thought, that's pretty funny. So I told her, and she got a laugh out of it. And then, speaking of that, Justin came up with a hilarious picture. Rick, you wanna just
so we were talking, Ryan, Justin and I were talking, and I had just come up with an idea. I said, hey, Justin, for the banner, why don't you make our pick one of the characters that we were assigned and just superimpose our face on it or something. And what he did is he actually, he said, okay, that's a pretty good idea. I've got something even better. And it's way better. He put Bill's face on Bane, but he made us the goons. So we're in the background. We're holding, AK-47s or whatever those weapons are. We're holding in our hands, those military style weapons. And there's just something about it that I think also the look on Ryan's face and the look on your face, and then the picture you're holding up. So it's the Harvey Dent. It's Chris Nolan's face. Hey, and I also noticed that just if he's listening, don't think I didn't notice that of all the millions of pictures of me online, because we're Facebook friends, that you take one with me in a beard. That dude likes me in a beard more than my wife does. I have a beard like 3 months out of the year, and he went right for the beard pick.
that little image, that little picture of Nolan is hilarious, man. I laughed hard.
Nolan makes me laugh.
I laughed hard. All right, so for Rick, I am Bill. This is Nolan on Film. Oh, I'm sorry, it's Batman on Film. We will catch you next time. Thanks for listening. Peace out.
Hey now! You've been listening to the Batman on Film podcast, a proud member and the sponsor of the Batman Podcast Network, BatmanPodcastNetwork.com. You can listen to the BOF podcast on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, TuneIn, and wherever good podcasts like this one can be found. Want to advertise on the BOF podcast? Go to advertisecast.com/the Batman on Film Con podcast. Follow Jett on Twitter at Batman on Film and on BOF's Facebook fan page at facebook.com/Jett.BatmanOnFilm. Email Jett via Jett@batman-on-film.com. Follow Rick on Twitter at ShoeRick and on Facebook at facebook.com/BOF-Shoe. For Jett, Rick, Justin, and Ryan, I'm announcer Rachel. Thanks for listening.